Your attention, masters, mistresses. All systems functional for the Everything Geek podcast.
Hey, my name's Rich McDonald, and I played David Mason in Call of Duty Black Ops 2, and you're listening to Everything Geek podcast.
Hey everybody, you're listening to Everything Geek podcast. Thanks for listening.
Hey, it's Leif Gaffert. I played Uncle Ben's killer in The Amazing Spider-Man, and you're listening to the Everything Geek podcast.
Hello, I'm Simon Fisherbecker. You probably know me better as Dorian Moldovar from Doctor Who, or the Fat Friar from Harry Potter. And this is Everything Geek podcast.
Face it, Tiger. You just hit the jackpot with the Everything Geek podcast.
You're listening to the Everything Geek podcast, bringing you interviews from your favorite films and TV shows every week, and all of the latest news. Here's your host, Rory Williamson.
Hello everyone, you're listening to the Everything Geek podcast. I'm your host Rory, and joining me today is a very special guest. We have Nils Hognestad, best known for playing King Arthur in DC's Legends of Tomorrow, Franz in Once Upon a Time, Akobel and Chris in Supernatural, fresh in the movie out here, Mr. Gournisht in Some Assembly Required, Aaron in Lake Placid 3, Sabrina in Grand Unified Theory, and Chewie in Ghost Wars. How are you today, sir?
I'm fantastic. How are you, Rory?
Very good, thanks. It's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
My pleasure. I'm excited.
So getting right into my questions for you, Nils, can you tell us how you got into acting?
Well, to be honest, it's one of those things that I'd always wanted to do ever since I was a child. Before I even knew what the word was for it, I'm from Norway originally, and so when I was speaking in Norwegian to my family, I would say that I wanted to be a talking face on TV, and so I ended up actually becoming that. So I mean, I started, I guess, my mom knew I was really interested when I was about 9 years old, when we were living in England at the time, and we went and saw a production of Cats. And my mom knew at that moment that I was going to be an actor. I didn't. It took me some more time, but she got me involved in some acting classes, and I got my first agent at 10, and then I just continued acting and auditioning and doing theater and voiceover and film and TV, and then I went to theater school, and then I got my post-grad, and yeah, I just kind of always continued with it. I always pursued it.
It's very cool. You're going to have to teach me some Norwegian, you know?
Okay, well, I'll teach you one for the end of this. Ha det bra means have it good, which also means like goodbye. So
that's really cool.
Ha det bra. I'm going to test you with that at the end of this. See if you remember that.
No pressure at all. My memory is terrible.
No pressure.
No pressure. Can you tell?
Yours and mine.
Can you tell me how you were originally cast as King Arthur in Legends of Tomorrow?
Same way as most auditions. You get the breakdown from your agent and say that they've submitted you, and if you're interested in going to the audition. And I was like, hell yeah, I'm interested in going to the audition, because King Arthur has always been an idol of mine ever since I was a child. Like, I grew up loving The Sword and the Stone. So when I saw that an audition for King Arthur, I was like, I could do this. And so yeah, I auditioned and got cast, and that's that. Sean and JJ, the casting directors, they were very kind and cast me in that, and I was very pleased to have been cast as it.
It's very cool. Were you a fan of the DC TV shows or DC comics prior to your casting in Legends?
To be honest, I didn't know much about the DC universe in regards to King Arthur in advance, but as soon as I was cast, I did start doing my research and then noticed that there was an entire separate series done by DC Comics called Camelot 3000. So to be cast as King Arthur in the Camelot 3000 episode was really exciting. And then I ended up reading a bunch of the comics and finding a bunch of things online. And I even went into some comic book stores and found some really cool paraphernalia from the old comics. And I started getting really involved in it as soon as I was cast. But prior to it, I wasn't that familiar with the DC universe in regards to King Arthur, but I definitely was a fan of King Arthur as a character in general. I mean, like I said, from Disney's Sword in the Stone, I was obsessed, and definitely related to Wart as a kid for sure.
Yeah, it's really cool. After first playing King Arthur in the episode Camelot 3000 last season, you recently reprised him for a cameo this season in Aruba-Con. How did you find out that the Legends crew wanted you to return?
Kind of similar to when I got the call for the audition. I got a call from my agent saying that the casting directors had checked my availability to see if I would be available to do another episode, and I was available, and it was a bit tight. I was actually shooting Ghost Wars at the same time, so there was some scheduling errors at the time, but we were able to make it work out. And so yeah, I got the call and was really stoked to be involved with it for sure. Mm-hmm.
That's really great. Are you hopeful that the cameo means the crew are open to more King Arthur episodes? Because it was a small cameo recently, of course.
It was small, but it was still really fun to be involved, and no matter how small it was. But yeah, I am definitely hopeful. I'm very curious to see what evolves in the storyline between Stargirl and King Arthur. Personally, I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens. I'm actually good friends with Sarah, who plays Stargirl, and so we've seen each other at award shows and been like, fingers crossed, let's hope. It would be really cool to see how that story evolves. Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. I'm very hopeful as well that they'll return to Camelot eventually. I mean, that was a really cool episode, of course.
Yeah, it was really, really fun, and judging by the rest of the series, it was completely different than what they're typically used to doing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. How would you describe the experience working with the cast and crew of Legends?
I mean, the entire experience was really fun. I still am in contact with a lot of the cast and crew, and everyone. It does feel like a bit of a dysfunctional family, like in the best of ways. I mean, the lead cast is all really wonderful and have been very welcoming, and the crew was really exciting to work with, and everybody is really positive. And working on such a big budget production there's always a sense of ease involved with that, because people aren't pinching pennies and trying to cut corners or anything like that. And so there's a lot of wonderful time and heart and energy invested into every show, and everyone involved, really, you get that sense from them as well. Everyone's really excited to be there.
That's really great. What would you say is your favorite memory from your time working on Legends?
I'd have to say it's from the Camelot 3000 episode, when we were shooting that battle sequence that happens at the end of the episode. No spoiler alerts or anything, but yeah, just shooting that entire sequence was really exciting. It was the end of, not this past year, but the year before, so 2016, we were shooting, and it was in late December. It was the last episode they were shooting before the Christmas break, and so everybody was a bit exhausted, but we had this massive fight sequence that we needed to get through, and it was we had it blocked out for 2 whole days to be able to shoot all of that battle sequence. And our director Antonio had directed it based off of the Battle of the Bastards from Game of Thrones. So you might get a little bit of a sense of that when you watch that episode, that it's quite a grand battle sequence. And we were really fortunate on the first day of shooting that battle sequence, doing all the fight moves and stuff like that, to suddenly get snow. Out of nowhere, there had been no snow in Vancouver at that time. And then out of nowhere, these massive, beautiful, softball-sized balls of snow start falling from the sky. And it was also sunny at the same time, so it created this really mystical feel, which really worked and lended itself very well to Camelot 3000. So yeah, that entire thing was quite a dream come true for myself, to be able to do a lot of my own stunts and be able to do all the sword play that I'd spent 5 years at theater school training to do, to finally be able to on camera be able to apply that. I mean, it was not without its challenges, because there was mud everywhere, and we were dealing with many extras, and everybody was fighting, and we had stunt doubles, and horses were there, and there was fire going, and there was snow falling. All of it was so exciting, and every single cast member kept turning around being like, "This is pretty cool, man. This is my dream." So yeah, we all felt like we were living the dream. It was a wonderful Christmas gift at the end of 2016.
Yeah, it's really fantastic, and that is just really great that of all the times for the snow to come down, it just came at that time because, I feel like I'll rewatch the episode and I'll view it differently, knowing that it just randomly snowed and it just adds to the scene so much. Like you'd think it was
Right?
planned, but it really wasn't.
Yeah.
It just happened by coincidence.
It was a very fortunate mistake, Rory. Like they had this. So on the first day, we luckily got that snow, but on the second day, it was a clear, blue-skied, sunny day, and they had to match that. So they brought in so many bags of feathers and had these fans going. So they actually had to start feeding these feathers into the fans to actually replicate what we'd have been experiencing the day before. So that in itself was also really cool to have these giant snowflakes of feathers fall, and it was all very magical. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. And I really like how you brought up the Battle of the Bastards, because that is one of the most iconic battle scenes of any TV show, really, I'd say, in recent years.
I'd fully agree with you there, Rory, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really... that's something, again, I feel like rewatching the Legends episodes that I'll be looking out for more to, see if there's any particular instances where I feel like there was a particular kind of nod to Battle of the Bastards.
Yeah. Well, Antonio's a very smart director. He definitely put in some little secret things in there for some good fans to be able to be like, hey, I know that from Game of Thrones, or just simple little nods towards Game of Thrones.
Yeah, the Star Wars references in the episode were a lot less subtle.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true. Yeah, that was that made me laugh so hard during the read through. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot less subtle for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Copyright infringement, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty close, I'll put it that way, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But it made its way to TV, so I guess it couldn't have been too much copyrighted.
Exactly, yeah. It made it all cleared. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What would you say were the biggest challenges you faced while working on Legends?
Biggest challenge that I was faced with. I think really it was being able to nail all of the fight sequences for sure, and then be able to. We didn't have that much time, and the actual stunt coordinator had kind of just shown me what they'd practice, what the stunt doubles would practice, and been like, "Do you think you can do that?" And I was like, "Go right ahead." And I really wanted to do my own stunts, so that for myself was definitely something that I really pushed myself on to. So any free moment, I was definitely standing there with my sword, trying to get every move down and dealing with that and the natural elements. Being stuck in mud. I had a big, heavy cape that was getting wetter and wetter and covered in more and more mud. And you're like, I got to keep this kingly and not look like I'm a pauper drowning in mud. So that was definitely the biggest challenge, I would have to say.
Yeah, I mean, most of the others just had to stay professional. You had to stay professional and stay kingly at the same time.
Right? Exactly. I had to keep that air about me, which is, yeah, it's heavy is the head that wears the crown,
That is I couldn't have said it better myself. What would you say, how would you describe the experience playing Chewie in Ghost Wars?
I hate to sound like a broken record and say it was a dream come true, but again, that was such a great experience to be able to work with Kim Coates and have all of my scenes directly with Kim Coates was like a crash course in acting. I find that working with Kim Coates was really, really wonderful. Like I said, it was like a crash course in acting, and just seeing him work was such a treat, and to learn so much from him just from acting alongside him was such a joy. The entire experience was really wonderful. We were out in Squamish, which is just outside Vancouver, and we were on a boat, and we were shooting in the middle of the ocean, and I was on a boat with Kim Coates doing all my scenes with him, and it was was fun to be able to play such a dirty character, especially after I was shooting that at the exact same time I was doing the second episode of Legends of Tomorrow. And so that was really cool to go from playing a king to playing a dirty first mate on a tiny little smuggling ship and getting to drink all the damn time with like ratty hair, and then to go to the next day onto set to play a king. Like it was really cool. It was a great balance and a perfect opposite to what I was doing with Legends.
Yeah, absolutely. Which would you say has been the most challenging role in your career so far?
Most challenging role so far. Oh God. See, I find that every role definitely has its own challenges, and I've been fortunate enough to, I think with growing my hair out, I've kind of fallen into a character actor demographic, which has forced me to do a lot of things that aren't my typical self. And so I have had to play British roles, Australian roles, and lots of random European roles. So for me, accents has been one of the biggest things that I've been forced to work on. I don't think I can choose a singular role that has been the most challenging because, like I said, every single one of them has had a different challenge completely. And it's mainly been voice work for on-camera stuff that's been the most challenging because I've had to do a whole other character to who I actually am.
Yeah, it's a really interesting answer. My final question for you, Nils, do you have any upcoming acting roles or any other projects that you would like to talk about?
Yeah. There's a new film coming out. Well, it's a remake of the 80s film Overboard. Were you a fan of that film?
I've heard of it. If I've seen it, it hasn't been for a while, so.
Yeah. So that for myself, that was a big film in my family growing up. That was like a family film that we all watched together, and I was lucky enough to be able to be cast in that film again, playing another first mate, but this time on a big old fancy yacht, and acting with Anna Faris and Eugenio Derbez. Yeah, so that was a really, really cool experience. So doing the Overboard remake, which is going to be coming out in the summer. This summer now. I don't have to say next year.
Yeah, I mean, we're only a few days into the new year, so it's still hard to, say this year instead of next year.
It's true. It's true. I'm still writing 17.
Yeah, I was the worst of that in school. Like, it would take me like a month or so into a new year, like on school work, to like be putting the correct year on it instead of the previous year. Yeah. And I have to say, who doesn't want to work on a big fancy yacht like you do?
Right? My God, over a week working on that yacht was unbelievable. And it was like the film itself, it has to be this really fancy, elaborate yacht. And so even as myself, who was acting and just being on the yacht, I definitely had a few moments where I just got to like wander around and be like, there's a hot tub on the top floor? Did you see that? There's a swim-up bar. Like, there was so many things. And I'm like, this thing is elaborate. It was cool. Yeah, that was a cool project. We actually had some of the crew members from the yacht that are hired to work on the yacht that ended up getting cast as extras in the film as crew members. So it was neat. It was really neat because then I got to talk to them directly and hear about how much I'd need to save up to actually rent this thing and how much it actually costs for the owner to own it. And yeah, no, it was the entire thing was a really, really fun, exciting experience.
Yeah, that's really cool that they got cast as extras as like compensation for their yacht being used.
Yeah, totally. They were like, living the dream, man. I'm like, and you just travel around on this beautiful yacht. They're like, yeah, life's pretty easy. I'm like, cool for you. That's cool.
So did they actually tell you how much it costs to own it?
Yeah. It was like, it's something for somebody. I think it costs like I don't know. I don't remember, but it's in the thousands, and it was absurd. And I was like, I think only celebrities can afford that kind of stuff. The owner just like rents out the boat for filming and for other people to rent it, and he always has it in the summer to be able to boat around at his leisure. I was like, oh, you all are just living the dream, man.
Definitely. It's probably good that you don't remember how much it costs.
Exactly, because I'm not planning on saving up to do that.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, they could be listening in and be like, oh, he still remembers. He's probably considering buying it.
Yeah, right. We just keep renting it out to films that are shooting on it.
Yeah, that's all of my questions for you today, Nils. It's been a pleasure talking to you on the podcast.
You too, Rory. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate that.
You're very welcome, and hopefully we can talk again sometime.
Definitely. Hopefully if there's another episode of Legends.
Absolutely. So I'll look forward to talking to you again soon, and thanks again for joining us today. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Rory.
No, I don't remember the Norwegian word.
Ha de bra.
Hard de
Can you say it?
bra.
Sure, that's so close. You basically got it. You nailed it.
I'll have to listen back to this, but it might go into a blooper reel too, for all I know.
I love it. That's great.
Yeah, take care. Bye.
Ha de bra.
Time to wrap up today's show. Make sure to check out our podcast links. Check out our website, website.everythinggeekpodcast.com/egp. Check out our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/everythinggeekpodcast. Check out our YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/user/everythinggeekcast. Check us out on Twitter, twitter.com/everythinggeekp. Check us out on Instagram, instagram.com/official-everythinggeekpodcast. Check out our Mixcloud profile, www.mixcloud.com/everythinggeekpodcast. Email us the following email, everythinggeekpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our companion podcast, Everything Geek Comiccast, www.facebook.com/everythinggeekcomiccast. Make sure to check out the host's YouTube channels. Mine is www.youtube.com/user/Septus Check out Nils Hognestad's website, www.nilshognestad.com, and check out channel 1138 where we broadcast live from, www.channel1138.com. Geeks out, everyone.
Well, definitely. I got to work with George Romero. Me and my writing partner Richard Chismar, we wrote something for Romero, and he was going to direct it. So we spent a lot of time talking to him, and it was about the thing that you were...
Victor Garber and the character justice. I didn't want to make it like a caricature, or you know, I wanted to have a lot of heart and try to be as real as possible without going over the top. And I think